Hello, Dr. Coleman.
Yes. Good to see you.
Um, Good to see you. I miss you. I know we skipped an episode during the holidays because we both just had so much travel and family stuff going on. And if one thing is true and very real about the both of us is that I think that, and something that I love about our relationship and working with people like you is that when we need a tick, we take a tick.
That's right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to be back, but I'm glad that we both kind of got to take a little extra time for ourselves and um yeah, so excited. I know you are juggling so many things. Dr. Coleman, of course, is um Soul Sisters, the founder of Soul Sisters, and is still a huge pivotal part of all the work that happens there, including this morning. So thank you for making time to jump from those meetings to jump here. I
Yes.
know, what one thing that we wanted to touch on just before we jump into our anonymous submission today
Today.
is something that's been near and dear to both of our hearts and also just impossible to ignore lately, which is what's happening in and around our country with the ICE raids and with immigration law, um, and how that's impacting not just us personally, but friends and family in our community. And yeah, I know, Dr. Coleman, oftentimes there are no words, but I feel like if anyone has words for us, it's you.
Yes. Thank you for starting us off with this because we would be remiss if we didn't. And it's such an ask for people to have to compartmentalize these things to go about life. Like there's so much that's happening if we're connected to the digital world, we're opening our phones, we're opening up news on TV and so forth, and it's all around us. And each of us have a relationship to it in one way or another. And even if that relationship might mean I have, I don't feel anything towards it, that's still a relationship to it. And in this case, you and I and so many are feeling a lot of really strong, intense things and emotions around it. So, uh, I'll be honest, I have clients that come to my practice looking for me to essentially show them the way, give them some insight. And this is hard for me. This is really, really tough for me because I don't know how to say anything that's going to make us feel better. This is awful. This is really awful. And I think that in naming that, I hope that that also can normalize our emotional responses for those of us who do feel enraged and helpless and hopeless. It's not a good feeling. I don't think we're entirely helpless and hopeless. At the same time, to be enraged, to be devastated, to be heartbroken is very aligned with what is happening. When we are disconnected, when we are aloof, when we are untouchable, when we can not feel it so much, that's, I think, what concerns me. And so I really just want to ground us in the shared grief. There's power in shared grief. There's also a lot that is said around grief when we bear witness to another's grief. There's power in that. So you and I, Melinda, are bearing witness to each other's grief in what we're witnessing in our country, in our communities. Those who are present with us at any time listening in, we are bearing witness with each other to the grief that we collectively hold. There's power in that. The second thing I can say to provide a little bit of hope, meaning, and movement is what maybe a lot of you have already heard is to not stay frozen in our grief, to face it, to feel it. But also, if there is a desire, which I'm imagining many of us, like, what can I do? That's usually the follow up question. What do I do? What can I do? Um, it usually lies in attaching ourselves to something meaningful and purposeful, like giving back, right? So I've seen a lot of posts around that too on social media, and I echo that. when we connect ourselves to local organizations or to national organizations to donate, to contribute, to lend a hand, um, to pause ourselves and listen to one another's stories, to provide empathy, that is taking ourselves out of the loop that's playing here and watching it replay here and putting ourselves back into real time, which is, hey, I can be an impactful citizen. I can be an impactful human. I can create change by showing up. And when we stay frozen in those emotions, it sometimes can feel like I don't know what to do, but there is something we can do as a follow up, and usually it is in service. So if anybody is feeling compelled to move outside of the loop of grief, again, we can face it and feel it, but I also encourage you to think about where can I tap in? Who can I tap into? If you don't know, you can also open up your phone for another purpose, which is to look up some things or ask your community, where do y'all like to volunteer? Where do you like to show up and contribute and serve? So hopefully that's a positive takeaway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I mean, you can
You can
tell so
tell
many of
so
these
many of these
emotions are just sitting at the surface for me, and I think for so many of us, because it's just
it's just
daily
daily
updates of, horrible news. So it's hard to escape. And I think one of the most beautiful things is our
is our
ability to
ability to
connect
connect
and
and
exercise
exercise
community.
community.
And that really truly
Truly
can
can
be
be
the
the
antithesis of depression and sadness. And,
sadness. Mhm.
I know
Yeah,
that pain doesn't go away, but there's something about moving that energy through your body and out of your body so you can transmute that and make more space for your ability to give and create change and all those beautiful things. So, but thank you for your words. I think more than ever, it's so important that we are protecting our mental health and our peace to a certain degree, but also being very realistic about our circumstances. And a beautiful way to nurture our mental health is through reaching out to others and through helping others.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also thinking about the power of our voices because there's a lot of noise right now and there are a lot of voices out there that are discouraging and scary. They're terrifying to hear what people's beliefs are and uh, interpretations of what's going on that are just so opposite of what I imagine you and I and so many are seeing. I think that so much of what's happening right now that we're seeing is just cruel, and other people who on the other side might think is not cruel and justifiable. And so when I think about, you know, the terms that we use, like speaking up for the voiceless, well, all of us actually have voices. Maybe our voices are just not as heard or as recognized or respected, but we have voices. And I think, especially from diverse communities, this is especially a time for us to use our voices, even if you never have before, even if you don't always know exactly what to say, to speak up and to say something. Your voice is powerful. You are more powerful with the words and the stances that you take right now because it really gives a lot of us more power collectively because there are a lot of voices out there and a lot of voices that are counteracting what we're standing on, which is, I hope, what we can agree on is right and just and humane. So please use your voice. There is another action item there for us to tap into, even when the world tells us that our voices don't matter or are not heard. We can be heard, and we have platforms just like everybody else can use these days to be able to exercise our voice.
And it's such a beautiful way to use your voice is to express it through your art. I think, people get caught up on how to be an activist. Using your art, whether it's applying a makeup look that expresses how you're feeling around this, or I know it can seem so trivial and unimportant when things are so heavy and dark, but I truly believe that that helps transmute that energy and move it out of your body in a really positive way. It creates awareness when you share it. It creates better energy when you move through it, and it inspires others, I think, to see the beauty in the world when the beauty can be so hard to see right now, and we have to hold on to that whimsy and that joy that we know that exists in order to keep fighting for it. Um, yeah, yeah.
It's so important. It shows us, especially diverse communities, when you are putting yourself out there through your art. I think there are different ways to name the injustices through it, whether explicitly or just showing up to, look at me. Like, this is what, in this case with the US, within the US, right? This is what the American dream looks like because I have the liberty to be able to do these things. This is why we continue to fight for the rights of people, of immigrants and so forth, right? This is, I have a purpose and a meaning, and just like everybody else does, right? And that's, I think, where we get caught up of deciphering who is more worthy of certain rights and accessibility than others. And that's not right. That is absolutely unjust. So I love that you said that because there is power in showing up as authentically you. There is power in exercising your voice and power through the mediums of your art. It's actually very healing for oneself as well as a beautiful display of you can't break me. And I'm standing up for
Mhm.
myself and I'm standing up for others to give them the same opportunities to have this life and liberty that is so called valued in this country for all. So I'm really glad that you said that. You said that.
Yeah, yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And
Now
now we're gonna practice
to
something
something
as we
transition
transition
into
into our
a
anonymous
positive
topic
topic
for
for
this
this
episode. We're
episode.
gonna
We're gonna
practice
practice
something
something
that
that
all of
all
us
of
are
us are
practicing
practicing
every day
every
at
day
the
at that
moment,
moment,
which
which
is
is
moving through our
moving through our
day-to-day
daily
lives
lives
and
and
remaining
remaining
focused on
focused
things
on
that are
things that are
important to
important
us
to
while
us.
holding space for what's going on in the world simultaneously. And it feels weird and strange and difficult to transition through. It's not normal to have these conversations and then talk about beauty comparison and how we're looking at what we look like versus others or where we're at in life versus others. But these things, although might look a little bit different at the moment, are still relevant and prevalent and so important to discuss. And so thank you to our Beauty Anonymous and Beauty Manifest community. Thank you for the individual who wrote in with this topic that I pulled out from some of them that were suggested. And this is just the concept of comparison, Dr. Coleman. So I think, low hanging fruit, we've talked about comparison in the digital space, which is a huge hot topic. And definitely, I think, top of mind when we look at comparison, whether it's through the way that we look or where we are in our career or our family life or those milestones that society tells us we're supposed to be at certain ages. Um, are there any kind of ideas or concepts that you have around comparison that you see as a theme in your day-to-day practice as a therapist?
It's been really obviously fun, but also just thought provoking to have these conversations with you, Melinda, because it we've really come across, I think, this thread of social media, and we talk about different things across our different episodes. But I'm thinking about what we are exposed to repeatedly. And again, I don't think every single person in the world is on social media, but it is such a common phenomenon now that we live in that's not going to be a phenomenon forever. It's kind of becoming a way of life. And I think about, how common and to a degree natural it is for us to compare ourselves to other people. It's not to say it's a good thing all the time, but we look at other people and might have some envy or curiosity or even admiration for people. But right now, what we are facing is overexposure to comparison. So when we think about, I'm not just having a tendency to compare myself to the inner circle that I have, or maybe the broader circle I have of our mutual friends or connections. Now it's like I am exposed to compare myself to anybody I come across who I don't even know. I have no idea. I have no personal connection to them or even a second or third degree. I have no connection to these people. And they are in the millions and billions of people in the world that I'm now
Yeah.
being tapped into compare myself to. So I think the first thing to really unpack is really coming to the surfacing the consciousness around it's a understandable it's an understandable thing for us to compare ourselves to others. It's also not normal to compare ourselves to so many people that are so detached from us. It's just an overconsumption
Yes.
exposure there. Anything to say about that so far?
Yes,
Yes, absolutely.
absolutely. I think you're dead on. We're on the same page for sure. I think, one of the things that really stands out to me personally is I've had friends come and go from Los Angeles and, living out in LA around Hollywood and the entertainment industry, there is this kind of added pressure of your environment and the comparison of that, um, that I've had friends talk about when they've had the experience of living in Los Angeles, one of which actually specifically left LA because of that feeling of comparison.
Really? Mm.
And it's interesting to me because I look at, social media and media in general, not just social media, but every media that we intake, and it feels impossible to escape.
Hey,
Like you
like you
can
can
live in
live.
LA and it might be even intensified a little bit, but now we're very much so in a day-to-day environment where it surrounds us, um, and in a much more attainable way. I think when our friends and acquaintances or people that we admire
They're
are
all
posting
posting high
highly
curated
curated content,
content. Mhm.
the peaks of their life, we're looking at them and they're a much more
Much more
attainable
attainable
person than
person than
maybe like an
an
A-list
A-list
actress
actress
used to
used
be
to
that
be
we
that
might
we
have
might
used
have
to
used to
compare
compare
ourselves to.
ourselves to. Right.
Now we're
Now we're
looking at
looking at
someone
someone
who
who
maybe we went
we
to
went
high
to high
school
school
with
with,
or that we
that we
used to
used to
work
work
with
with
5 years
5 years
ago and
ago,
is
and
now
is
a beauty influencer
sort of
or something
something
along those
along those
lines.
lines.
And we're
And we're
like,
like,
"Wait,
"Wait,
we're
we're
just
just
like
like them.
them. We were
We were
peers,
here.
and yet
They
they are
are
posting this,
posting this,
this, and this."
this."
So I
So I
think the
think the
comparison is
comparison is
almost
almost
intensified. We
intensified. We
used to
used
be
to
able
be
to
able to
pull
pull
ourselves out
ourselves
of
out
it a
of it
little
a little
bit,
bit, uh,
when
when
comparing ourselves to,
comparing
like,
ourselves
those
to, like, mainstream
mainstream celebrities, the
celebrities, the
billboards, the
billboards, the
magazines. There
magazines.
was a little bit of a disconnect, whereas now we are all influencers and we all are all
That is
posting
so true.
curated content, and we are all throwing a filter on or
Yep.
having beautiful lighting surround us, like I do right now. And so there's just more layers to that comparison, and it's so much more, I guess, I don't know if attainable is the right word, but
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
that sounds like a positive thing, but yeah,
yeah. But I think that makes a
what's
lot of
your
sense
thoughts?
because you're really highlighting that there's something alluring about, um, being an anybody can be an influencer. So I can influence you just with my day to day. I could show you my family. We can show each other, what we did in accomplishments and so forth. So it's no longer the inaccessible celebrity, which we might look up to and say, but I know that that's not me because I'm not a celebrity. But now with this kind of middle tier that you're naming, there are millions and
Yes.
millions of people who we are, even if they're a formal influencer getting paid for to be that or otherwise, we're all kind of influencing each other. And so that
Yeah.
is really, really important marker there. Then when it comes back to us, we're thinking, I have myself again to contrast my life with millions of people who are actually not entirely out of reach. They actually do seem more closely knit to me, even if I don't know them personally. I might, but I might not. But their lifestyles don't feel too far across. Their lives don't feel too separately from mine, and yet they do. And that can be really
Yeah.
confusing and overwhelming for the brain, right? It's like, so we're thinking about the intensity, the overwhelm of exposure, and then also the proximity, right? Of like how close yet far that can feel for us. And then let's think a little bit about how that can affect us mentally and emotionally. Of course, we can think about how anxiety provoking that can be for us to always be thinking about, you know, what could I be doing? What could I be doing? And how depressing that can be, how much that can provoke, um, you know, some symptoms around helplessness, around I'll never be that. It could make us go more inward instead of motivating us to go try harder. It can make us go, well, I'm not good enough for that, and have some maybe more negative self-talk around that. We talk a little bit about isolation because, again, at the end of the day, it seems like we're so socially connected because of all these different people we're exposed to, but we're
Yeah.
often looking at people. in isolation. So what does that do
Yes.
when our brain is on loop of exposing ourselves to other people and we look around like, "Oh, it's actually just me sitting in a room by myself," or it's just me sitting with my family and I'm looking, "Oh my gosh, my house doesn't look like that. My clothes don't look like" right? So we do all these things. My beauty routine, I need to step it up. There's these different expectations that we put on ourselves, and our brains are trying to make sense of inward, outward, and our anxiety is increasing. Our depressive symptoms might be increasing as a result too. So these are just things that might be happening. I think when we think about what do we do with this information, we always talk about in this space, especially like just monitoring our intake. So if we know that we are on here on a constant loop, and again, you might not be on social media, so this might be for other folks. If I am constantly comparing myself to my friends that I talk to my family members, to people in my community, even if it's not on social, we still maybe have a tendency to compare. If we notice we're ruminating, right? This is a lot around rumination, and we're ruminating these thoughts that take up a lot of brain space and emotional space. Some things I offer to my clients and in treatment is creating a sort of limitation around those ruminating thoughts. So, for example, again, it can sound a little unattainable, but we have to put it into practice to start, right? Is you know, asking yourself, how long do I spend thinking about this and comparing myself? And some of you might say, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about other people's lives and not having what they have and not having the beautiful looks and so forth that they have all day. Well, what does that really mean? Okay, 8 hours. Wow, that's a really long time. That takes up most of your time. What is that taking away from you? I have a hard time
Too
focusing.
much.
I have a hard time, right? Tapping into my joy, into my peace, into gratitude for what I do have and the health and the beauty that I do already reflect. There's a lot that can be stolen from us when we're ruminating. Brain space, thought space, thinking about other things. So, for example, can we take 8 hours? Again, I'm using a broad example, but can we shrink that down? And we have to make that goal attainable. So maybe you say, I'm going to shrink it down from my whole day of being at work or being, mostly awake to 3 hours. Maybe then you're like, you know what? 3 hours sounds kind of crazy. Like when I think about it, I don't want to spend that much time ruminating. And that might snap somebody into go, okay, I might spend some time thinking about this on my commute home, or I'm going to spend a little bit of time giving myself some space to just feel a little something about this. And then I'm going to say, all right, you know what? I gave you that time ruminating thoughts on to the next,
Yes.
right? There's so much control in what we can actually do. It takes practice. But I think when we bring this to consciousness, we go, why am I spending so much time and energy thinking about this? It's not serving me. And I think also that second bit of what is it taking from me as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. So well said. And a really very important reminder to us all to recognize the control that we have over our own experience and our own perception, and how when we can consciously be present, it can make such a difference in how we feel. Um, I've been on both sides of this because as a public figure for Sephora and moving in front of the camera, I started to transition into sharing a lot more of myself on the internet than I ever did before. Now, not to say that I think the comparison always happened to me prior to that. Like any other human, the comparison was happening. But once I started to put myself in front of the camera and share more, I started to recognize the other side of it, which is what am I sharing versus what am I not sharing? And how is that impacting others the same way that it was impacting me when I was on the receiving end?
Mhm.
And it really has pushed me into wanting to share more of myself more vulnerably, like the not so curated, the not so always pleasant. I am, or at least I have been for the past few years of my life, depression prone. I've gone through a lot of pain and struggle in the last, let's say, like 5 to 6 years. And, I lost my mom at a young age. Everyone goes through pain. I have experienced a lot of death, a little bit more than I think the average, and that's weighed really heavily on me. And it's been a difficult balance to figure out how to share that while also sharing the beautiful, positive, expression that I get to do through beauty and through fashion and through these things that I love. Um, but I think what's important is the awareness of it because the more I can think about what I'm putting out there, the more I think about how what is being put out there impacts me. And so I think regardless of what your job is or how you use social media, I think it's worth thinking about. You don't have to be a mental health advocate to want to share with your followers, whether they're just friends or family or they're a bunch of strangers that you've collected over years of sharing on social. I don't think it matters who it is or how big your community. It's how you want to share yourself and what you're comfortable with. But that was so impactful for me is just sitting with it and recognizing how I both give and receive. And I think the more of us that are willing to do that, especially the ones that do work in social spaces, um, the more authentic connection that'll create and the better we'll all become at really holding space for what's a little bit more real.
I agree. I agree. And you've taught me a lot around the the shifts in people wanting more authenticity and vulnerability on social platforms because again, we are mostly exposed there on that space and knowing that generally many things that we see are curated, highlight reels and so forth. It can give us a false interpretation of what other people's lives really are. And again, like you said, it's everybody's choice of what they choose to share. We don't necessarily have an immediate right to know every
Absolutely.
bit about everybody else. At the same time, even if we don't see, I think it's also kind of our duty to remind ourselves, I'm seeing this bit of this person. Um, I engage with this person, whether watching them or following them or engaging with them otherwise. That is my choice. I also have a choice if this is a little too much for me to shift away from that periodically, because we go from overexposure and then sometimes we have to go to no exposure. But at the same time, we also want to get to a healthy relationship with being exposed to things to be able to have more of a handle on things. So if we're
Yes.
recognizing I am overexposed, I need to take a break. At the same time, I want to have a healthy relationship with social media or people around me. I can't just again isolate myself forever. Um, how do I have a healthy relationship where I'm exposed but also in control? So that takes a little bit of time, but I think that mindfulness around every day I'm overexposed to different people, different messages, different looks, and it makes me feel some type of way. Identify what those feelings are. What is it taking from you, as I mentioned, and what is the alternative? So a lot of this can also
Yes.
be within reframing this. That person's really beautiful. I really admire their outfit. I love their home. Their family looks so cute, right? These are goals I might have. Like we can reframe that versus I'll never have what they have. They're so much prettier than me. That's why they have all these followers. Like all these different things I'm sure many of us think, right? Just like, they're always going to get that. I'm never going to have this, right? There's some what are called cognitive distortions that can arise. So we can work towards, okay, maybe I need to limit my exposure, do a little bit of refining around my self talk. Maybe that refinement of self talk means oh, this is really bad. I need to take a look at this and
Yeah.
some help for this. Or maybe it's not so bad. And you recognize, I think I just needed a little bit of a break. Melinda, you always are my guiding post of taking social media detoxes. So I'm like,
Oh,
I imagine
so
that's really helpful.
important.
Yeah. Cause we know it's like, dang, I really am exposed. I need to limit that. And when I tap back in, take note, how do I feel? Am I as activated as I was before? Am I able to enjoy what I'm exposed to? Is the comparison as intense as it was? And then we have a choice to decide, do I need to tap out again or do I need to minimize a little bit more? And again, we're talking about social platforms, but I think that can be in relationship with people
Yeah,
too. I'm not inviting folks
absolutely.
to cut off and be rude and but sometimes we recognize even in our interpersonal relationships, I think I just need to like reevaluate because I'm feeling certain things and I actually don't want to take it out on those people, but I also don't want to be hurting myself. So there's some evaluation that we have. And I think we all deserve that space to evaluate and reevaluate what's going on inside of us. and minimizing the projection we might put on other people who actually might not intend to harm us.
Yes. Dr. Christine, I feel like you always come with very tangible takeaways. So thank you for that. I think not only do you share like your authentic feelings about these subjects, but you really come with tools. So I appreciate that. I hope that all of our listeners can walk away from this with a few ideas of how to protect themselves and their own peace a little bit more. If I can say one thing just to kind of wrap us up, I really truly believe that this timeline of comparison that we hold is completely made up. Whatever society has been telling us of when you're supposed to be doing a certain thing in life, when you're supposed to look a certain way in life, it is all entirely made up. And I know that sounds so obvious and I don't know, blunt, I guess, but I think the more you sit with this subject and the more you practice the tools that Dr. Coleman has expressed here today, I can say from experience, it has shifted my perspective into a place of a much more healthy self love and a place of comparing myself to who I was yesterday, not to anybody else, because I'm only becoming a better version of me. And who else should I want to be than the most authentic me? But,
Yeah.
it takes time to get there, and I've been working really hard at it, and what Dr. Coleman shared here today is really juicy and very helpful. So thank you again for being here.
You.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you sharing your light and your guidance. Please, everyone out there, do not hesitate to reach out via DM or comments or email, whatever you're most comfortable with, to share anonymously what you might like Dr. Coleman and I to focus on for our next episode. Thank you. I appreciate you, Dr. Coleman, and we will
Yeah.
see you all next time.